Hello, welcome to chapter number 3. In this chapter, you will learn the basics about important tools in economic analysis. Let's start. The first important concept is the concept of elasticity, which is actually a concept borrowed from physics. Elasticity measures the responsiveness of a percentage change in one variable resulting from a percentage change in another variable. This is important for at least one very important reason. While the law of demand says that the quantity demanded must fall due to an increase in the price of the good, it doesn't tell you by how much. Therefore, we need a tool to measure this. This is why we have the price elasticity of demand. This, more specifically, measures the responsiveness of a percentage change in the quantity demanded of good X to a percentage change in its price. So we have a ratio. Notice that taking the absolute value, its size determines what type of demand we're talking about. So we are going to say that the demand is elastic if the price elasticity of demand is larger than 1. We are going to say that the demand is inelastic if the price elasticity of demand is less than 1, and we are going to say that the demand is unit elastic if the price elasticity is equal to 1. You're going to find examples, numerical examples, for further study slides of this chapter. So let's move on to an important application of this concept. This application is very important for managers because it relates to total revenue. That's multiplying the price you charge times the amount you sell of the good or service that you are producing. So, let's take a look. Notice the way this demand curve is drawn. Very steep, which means very inelastic, which means not very responsive to changes in prices. Assume an initial price of $10 and quantity demanded of 100 units. This gives you a total revenue of $1,000. P times Q, 10 times 100, $1,000. Then assume a price increase to $20 and that quantity demanded, according to the law of demand, falls to 90 units. This new price gives you a total revenue of $1,800. That means that total revenue goes up when price increases. This basic example illustrates that revenue rises as price increases if the demand is inelastic. Why? Because an inelastic demand is not very responsive to changes in prices. But now let's see a different situation. Notice the way this demand now is drawn. Very flat, which means very elastic, which means very responsive to changes in prices. Assume an initial price of $10 and quantity demanded of 250 units. This gives you a total revenue of $2,500. Then, similar to the exercise, the previous exercise, assume a price increase to $20 and that quantity demanded, following the law of demand, falls to 50 units. The new price gives you total revenue of only $1,000. In this case, revenue falls as price goes up. This basic example illustrates that revenue falls as price rises if the demand is elastic. Why? Because an elastic demand is very responsive to changes in prices. This slide presents a summary of this relationship. You can either pause the presentation to read it carefully, or you can consult your textbook, which contains the same information. Now, there are two extreme possible price elasticity values. One, when the demand is perfectly inelastic, the price elasticity of demand is equal to 0. This means that the demand is totally responsive to changes in prices, and this is illustrated by a perfectly vertical demand curve. 2, When the demand is perfectly elastic, the elasticity is equal to infinity. This means that the demand is totally responsive to price changes, and this is illustrated by a perfectly horizontal demand curve. Notice that these two extreme values are theoretical benchmarks only. This means that normally we don't see this type of consumer behavior in real life. But in theory, these are possible values. Now, a good question to ask at this point is, what determines the value of the price elasticity of demand? Well, we can think of three factors. First, if a good or service has more substitutes, the demand will be more elastic. The demand for gasoline, for example, tends to be inelastic since there are not many substitutes for gasoline. Second, the more time we have to shop, the more elastic the demand. This is why when we're in a rush, we are willing to pay a higher price for something. And third, if the price of the good or service is large in relation to our budget or income, our demand tends to be more elastic. This is why we react very differently when the price of homes and salt, the condiment or pepper, for example, increases by 30%. The reaction is completely different. All right. Another very important tool is the cross-price elasticity of demand, which measures the responsiveness of a change in price of good Y to the quantity demanded of good X. Notice, we are mixing two goods, not only X, but now good X and good Y. When this elasticity is positive, good X and Y are substitutes, like chicken and beef, for example. When this elasticity is negative, good X and Y are complements, like gasoline and cars, for example. Yet another important tool that you need to master is the income elasticity of demand, which measures the responsiveness of a change in income of the quantity demanded of good X. When this elasticity is positive, good X is said to be normal, like most goods and services in the economy. When this elasticity is negative, good X is said to be inferior. Please consult your textbook for a good explanation of this situation. Of course, now that you understand how the tool works, elasticity, you can create your own elasticity measures. For example, you can calculate how responsive is your customer base to changes in the amount of advertising that you spend. That way you can target better these resources or increase or reduce them. Your imagination and talent is the limit as to how to apply these concepts. So learn them well. Okay, this concludes chapter 3 and I will see you until the next chapter.